people need to understand that every issue you care about, whether it's healthcare, environmental reform, economic justice, poverty, homelessness, everything comes full circle to this issue of money in politics.
All these problems have solutions that are pretty obvious, pretty simple, and the only reason we don't enact the obvious, immediate, and available solutions is because of the excessive power of the affected industries.
I feel if somebody just raided my brain and made a commercial in the middle of the night. It has been nearly 2 years since Citizens United opened the floodgates of secret money in politics. There have been money in our political system for a long time. There just hasn't been this volume of it with this limited level of disclosure. Ironically, Republicans for years have always argued for transparency. Democrats have argued for restrictions, and now we have unrestricted without transparency. The video you just saw is part of an effort, this one, by People for the American Way, and it is their undertaking to get the Supreme Court ruling of 2010 reversed. The symptoms of the disease that money in politics are is obvious in the 2012 presidential election, where campaigns and super PACs, rife with secret money, are intent not only on raising cash, but on using it to manipulate the optics, not necessarily through advocacy, but through the annihilation of a threatening identity. And whether you hate Newt Gingrich or don't like Mitt Romney, a system that allows a super PAC to take anybody out, eventually it'll be your favorite politician, trust me, in those crosshairs. And joining us now is Marge Baker, who is with us from People for the American Way. Let's cut to the chase. Your whole point, your whole commercial is kitchen table issues are kitchen table issues because money in politics prevents them from getting resolved.
That's correct. And the only answer we really have to the toxic issue of money in politics is to amend the Constitution. We're working with a constellation of organizations with literally millions of members around the country, and organizations including Public Citizen, Common Cause, Free Speech for People, Move to Amend, our organization, People for the American Way, Center for Media and Democracy. We're all working together as part of this umbrella called United for the People, and we are working to call attention to the problems of Citizens United and urge its amendment, urge the amendment of the Constitution.
Very quick question, and I'll release you to the panel. When you look at the history of constitutional amendments, the amendment to move to amend the Constitution to lower the voting age to 18, like that, it was a justice issue. It was unjust to send an American young man or woman to war who couldn't even vote for the president. It wasn't viewed as a left or a right issue. It was viewed as an unjust issue. ERA, in principle, a justice issue. Men and women equal. But the prosecution of that campaign came from the left, and as a result, the ERA ultimately became perceived as and failed as a leftist amendment. How do people like you reach out to people like Tim Carney and others that are in the Tea Party, that are in the conservative faction, that may be Ron Paul type people, libertarian type people that will be persuaded to the justice narrative, but might be alienated by some of the liberal politics that some of these organizations are into away from this issue?
Right. I think it's fair to say that those who are in this UnitedForThePeople.org constellation don't believe that this is a partisan issue. This is not a Democratic issue, Republican issue. This is not a liberal issue, conservative issue. This is an issue that the American people care about. And the American people there, the polling, as you show it,
sure,
overwhelmingly, 92% of the American public think that there's too much corporate money in politics.
Imogen, go ahead.
The Constitution has been amended, 27 times?
Correct.
17 times. Bill of Rights, and then,
okay, but women's rights, civil rights, and so forth. Obviously, a lot of these took years. What sort of time scale are you looking at for this?
I think we are in a movement moment, and this part of the movement right now is grassroots organizing. As we just heard from the previous person you had on from Los Angeles, this is a time to organize on the ground for people to express their views, to go to their their city councils and their state legislatures and compel their elected officials to take a look at this issue to understand the importance of amending the Constitution. So this is a grassroots movement that's going to grow, and then I think we will see some real action. There have been 10 amendments already introduced, resolutions already introduced in Congress, both the House and the Senate, and it's fantastic that those are in. Right now, I think the organizing, which is what we're trying to do with UnitedForThePeople.org, is to try to help support that grassroots organizing, that grassroots pressure for amending the Constitution.
But a lot of us worry that when government gets in the business of regulating who can participate in political speech in what ways, that it's an infringement on civil liberties. Citizens United was a non-profit group. They weren't a big corporation, and they were trying to put out a DVD criticizing the woman who was the front runner to be president of the United States. And the FEC was saying, no, it's illegal for you to put out a movie criticizing this woman because it's too close to the election that she's participating in. So, sure, maybe we agree on, I think banks have too much control over politics. We do agree on that. But how do you draw the line between that and some other groups that want to have their voice heard and think that doing it collectively is the most effective way to do it?
Well, there's a couple of issues. One, the Supreme Court didn't have to take the radical step it did to basically unleash the power of corporate treasuries on the American election system in order to deal with the issue that was in Citizens United. They could easily have decided that on narrow grounds.
Well, because Citizens United was non-profit?
No.
Where would you
there were so many different ways they could have done it. They could have said this wasn't electioneering communication. They could have said it was a movie. They didn't do that. They reached out and deliberately wanted to decide this decision in as biggest way possible.
And it's ended up pouring.
But what we have now is not political speech. We have money flooding the airwaves so that nobody can. There is no debate. It's a question of who's auctioning off who's buying the elections, who's auctioning off the highest bidder.
Tim brings up an interesting issue, though, which is, and listen, we agree, the current auction process is an abomination against our democracy. But Tim brings up a very valid question, I think, which is, so let's say the constitutional amendment passes, and you now have either a public financing apparatus or some other sort of control mechanism. You still, by the way, have massively distorted power for me and everybody else who hosts a TV show to shoot their mouths off,
and
which
GE
is
and Comcast
or whoever else it might be. I mean, there are other distorting aspects. In other words, money obviously is not the panacea, or the amendment is not the panacea. And to Tim's point, I think it's interesting for all of us to think about what is the appropriate mechanism for political communication if, in fact, you're going to get involved with money, which is how we're currently purchasing communication.
Couldn't agree more, but right now our hands are tied. Right now what the Supreme Court has said is you can't do anything. You can't regulate this at all.
But you concede that he makes a valid point.
That absolutely, we have to have a rational regulatory structure, but right now we can't have anything. Right now the court is saying we can't do anything, and that's the problem.
Is the most important amendment one that deals with corporate personhood? Because isn't that sort of the key to the whole thing? Because once it's established that corporations do not have the same rights as people, a lot of things fall into place much easier after that, or what is the amendment?
Right. Well, one important thing is I don't think there is any the amendment right now, and I think that's really, really important. I think there is a really healthy, exciting dialogue going on right now about what that amendment should look like so that we can do the kind of regulatory framework that you're talking about. One way to go at it is deal with corporate personhood. Another way to go at it is to deal with money as speech.
Or another way to go at it, as the occupation did in Zuccotti Park, is to say money is not speech and corporations are not people.
That's exactly right.
That's where that's what you call the full Monty.
I think this is a multi-pronged problem that needs multi-pronged solutions, and what we're doing with UnitedForThePeople.org is to try to have the debate and use the second anniversary of the Citizens United decision to do the kind of events to call attention.
And I agree with that. I also think that it's remarkably important that not only we keep voices like Tim's in the debate, but also invite other voices like Senator Tom Coburn and Mark Meckler from the Tea Party Patriots, because I know that these people have significant reservations with the functioning of the electoral system, as you and I and we do, but they're good critics, as you can see, to issues that sometimes, I think I'm like, listen, Tim, knock it off. And other times, I think, the guy's got a pretty good point. So I think that there's room for a vigorous debate this winter, period. And I hope that we can include all comers.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think this is a really exciting time that we're in. This is a movement, and it's time for that debate.
Awesome. Marge Baker, People for the American Way, if they want to learn more about what you guys are up to,
please go to www.united4thepeople.org.
All right. A great pace and another wonderful resource in addition to what's going on with the occupation, and obviously the folks who Get Money Out, and Russell Simmons and Ben and Jerry, and the list goes on. So it's an interesting time. Straight ahead here, we say adieu to the panel. Adieu.